Devon Achane's coming back soon, so a lot of people are going to use that as an excuse to sell Raheem Mostert. But we say this all the time. If everybody is selling somebody, is that person actually a sell? It could make them a hold. So are we buying, selling, or holding Raheem Mostert? We're each going to give you our individual answers. I'm going to start. I'm holding Raheem Mostert. I think that everybody is going to be very quick to hold or to sell Raheem Mostert once Achane comes back. And because of that, again, if everybody wants to sell, what value are you actually getting for Raheem Mostert? There are slight caveats to this. If you're moving Raheem Mostert to get like a Bijan, or anybody in that top tier of running backs.
A non-sick Bijan, to be fair.
Okay, yeah. I'm doing that. But here is the problem. Sam,
you're not getting it.
Sam, zoom in on my face when I say this. Nobody's making that trade.
None.
Again, everybody wants to sell Raheem Mostert. And when you have everybody wanting to sell a player naturally, especially when that player is a running back one right now, naturally makes them a hold. I do understand Devon Achane, when he comes back, is going to eat into some of Raheem Mostert's snap count. I get that. However, I do feel like it's going to eat into more of Ahmed's snap count and Jeff Wilson's snap count than it will Raheem Mostert's snap count. Because Raheem Mostert has consistently been the guy for them this season, and every time I've watched him, I mean, it's been fairly promising. You're looking at his attempts inside the 20-yard line, and 18 attempts this year. 18 attempts. I mean, even though last week he only had 6 points against Philly, you're looking at against Carolina, 34 points. 15 against the Giants. I think that once Achane comes back, Mostert is going to get enough work to still be very, very explosive, be very, very high end as a fantasy scorer. I think they'll both be startable. But again, everybody's anticipating that return of Achane, and they're selling him. So naturally, to me, I'm going to say it's not worth selling him. He's got running back one upside. As soon as Achane were to get hurt again, which is very possible, Mostert maintains him being, a running back one right now in fantasy football. I'm not holding, everyone's selling. If you have actually sold Raheem Mostert, drop it in the comments and let me know. Because there are some trades I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm doing that. Absolutely. Somebody said there was a trade for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that, though. Let's be realistic here, guys. I don't think people are making those trades unless, if you play in home leagues and you can take advantage of people, go, by all means, please do.
Right.
But I want to know your verdict.
Yeah, no, I think you're looking at his touchdowns this season. He's just over 6 touchdowns above expected entering week 7 this season. And you're like, a lot of people are saying, yeah, well, Raheem Mostert's production isn't sustainable and Achane's going to take away from that. Like we've already said, we know, just like the rest of the world knows. We all know touchdowns are volatile. We all know that if you took those touchdowns away from Mostert, he wouldn't be producing. We also know that the same thing applies to Devon Achane. So why is Devon Achane the second coming and Mostert is just irrelevant?
He's right. He's right. And the other thing is, like, you're talking about 6.1 touchdowns above expected. How many of those were in the week where he scored 4 of them? In one game.
Yeah.
And you take away the one game. I don't care. Points per game, I guarantee you he's still an RB1.
Yeah.
He's got to be, right?
Yeah. I think, honestly, it really is pretty humorous when you see something like this, when you see this insane production from an unexpected running back, and you're like, well, if you take away these games, if you take away that game, or you take away that week, then he actually only has done this or will only do that.
It's the T.
You take
Higgins
T. Higgins,
right,
who hasn't played a lot of games, and you say, well, you take away those games that he didn't play, then he's actually done this.
Guys, let's not be selective.
Let's give credit to the people who have produced.
Yeah.
And let's be downers on the people that haven't.
Again,
fantasy football, fantasy points. Points win you games. Points win you leagues. Yeah. Raheem Mostert is scoring you points now. And guess what? A lot of teams, half the teams in fantasy football right now do not have the luxury of selling Raheem Mostert because they are desperate at the running back position. They are desperate to make a playoff run. They are desperate to win over the next 4 weeks to even have a chance to make a run. You've got to hold Raheem Mostert.
Yeah,
guys.
I think he's a hold. Talk about Puka, though.
Yeah, Puka Nacua, man.
Deep breaths.
Us, along with everyone else, had very fair questions about Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
No one, I don't think anyone in their right mind was denying the incredible stretch that Puka Nacua had through the first 4 games without Cooper Kupp. Everyone knew that Cooper Kupp was coming back, though.
And that was the big question.
And that was a big question against Philadelphia. Then You see Cooper Kupp's first game back in week 5, and Puka puts up 20 points. And you're like, holy crap. He may be legit. 11 targets in that game with Cooper Kupp. And then they play Arizona. He only has 7 targets for 6 points. And you're like, oh, maybe we're coming back to earth. That's a regression. Puts up 23 points, severely out-targets and outproduces Cooper Kupp against Pittsburgh in week 7, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 154 yards. Guys, I am looking beyond just the fantasy points here. I'm looking at the fact that Puka Nacua has not scored very many touchdowns this year. He's scored 3 touchdowns on the year through 7 weeks. He is producing as a high-end wide receiver 1 without the touchdowns. I mean, you want to complain about Mostert's touchdowns? You can't say a dang negative thing about Puka Nacua, dude.
That's exactly what you want.
If anything, Kupp and Puka are helping each other. They really are, man. I mean, who are you going to... You could say that, yeah, Puka's a product of the system and that they're just putting him in the right spot as an NFL talent. Sure, you can make that argument, but, I mean, you could also look at the catch that he had against Pittsburgh this week on the sideline. Did you see that one, like the 30-yard pass that Stafford had?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Crazy.
Side note, Rabbit Trail, I know. He is legit. Absolutely legit. Like, you have to credit at least 60% of this production to him as an actual NFL talent. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, this production ain't going to end, guys.
No.
It's not. Because it's not dependent on touchdowns. It's not dependent on red zone opportunity. Kyron Williams getting his own. Puka Nacua getting his own. Cooper Kupp getting his own. Darrell Henderson has a nice floor with 18 carries now that Kyron Williams is out. Right at expected touchdowns through week 6, Puka Nacua has been thus far. You have got to be optimistic about Puka Nacua this season for the rest of the year. And ultimately, if you have people that are low on his upside because of Cooper Kupp, I think there's an argument to be made that Puka Nacua is a buy. No, because he's in deals, he is not being treated like a top 6, top 8 receiver in fantasy.
And also understand, that buys by default are holds, but not all holds are buys or sells. So,
correct.
So he's also a hold if you have Puka. But
yes,
with Puka Nacua, like, this is everything you want in a fantasy receiver. The receptions without the touchdowns, double-digit targets, a quarterback throwing 50 points. I mean, like,
it screams sustainable.
And so I'm going to say buy too, but I'm going to say buy based off the trades I saw last week. If there are people that are getting smart now and actually valuing him on what he should be, he may not be such a hard. I mean, if you're actually paying top 6 wide receiver prices for him, there are probably safer options there still. There still are. He's still playing with Cooper Kupp. But if you have people that are still taking top 18 wide receiver prices for Puka Nacua, like I saw in our comments last week, on our live streams last week, he's a buy. This is not only his ceiling. I mean, he's had double-digit targets in 3 of the last 4 games. This is his normal. His ceiling's 20 targets, guys, even with Cooper Kupp.
This is a 6-7-year veteran wide receiver performance that he's putting up as a rookie right now. Granted, to be fair, there is going to be risk with any fantasy asset in the Rams offense because it is purely and totally dependent on Matt Stafford's health for the rest of the season. I get that. I understand that. That is why there is a chance that Puka Nacua, even though he's producing as a top 6 wide receiver in the NFL, could go for a slight discount, maybe a top 12 wide receiver. But ultimately, you can't depend on, you can't just assume that Matt Stafford might get hurt at this point in time. You just have to trust and have to depend on the production that's going on right now that is sustainable.
So Garrett Wilson, are you buying, selling, or holding Garrett Wilson? Looking at Garrett Wilson, I mean, really, when you're looking at his game log, you can see how hit or miss he is, quite literally. I mean, 16 points, 9 points, 15 points, 8 points, 17 points. Naturally, you'd probably guess he's going to get around 8 or 9 points this week. But with that being said, I mean, Garrett Wilson has been fairly, I would say fairly good given the situation in New York.
He's been way better than I think anyone really expected once Rodgers went down. I thought we were going to go into another situation with Zach Wilson last season. Garrett Wilson and Zach Wilson, obviously that production last year was a complete dumpster fire. Garrett Wilson, almost all of his production came from Flacco and Mike White.
Look at the cornerbacks he's faced in the last 5 weeks too. I mean, you're looking at those productions. He had 8 targets, 9 targets, 14 targets, 7 targets, and 12 targets.
Yeah.
But not once did he have double-digit receptions. He had 9 receptions and 8 receptions, but then 3, 5, and 2. Stephon Gilmore against Dallas. Christian Gonzalez, who has been very, very good as a rookie. Very good. Against New England. L'Jarius Sneed, Kansas City. Patrick Surtain, Denver, James Bradbury. Philadelphia, you're talking about a guy that's had a tough matchup pretty much every single week. Yep. A guy that last year was in the 94th percentile for success rate against press coverage in his rookie year, and dang near the 80th percentile against man. So a guy that's perfectly capable. We all know the talent that Garrett Wilson is. Right now, Garrett Wilson, dare I say, with what he has been able to still do, and with Zach Wilson looking more confident, you may disagree with me on this. I'm going to go buy. I'm going to say buy for Garrett
I'm actually going to agree with you there because you're getting him at
so
high
cheap,
to mid grade wide receiver 3 prices, and with that target volume, that's better than any of those receivers going in that range at that price right now. So I think you're looking at that floor and that opportunity. You're like, hey, there's a chance the Jets continue to capitalize and get better offensively, even with Zach Wilson. And then there's obviously the chance that Rodgers comes back for maybe even the last third of the season if they're still in contention for the playoffs. So yeah, I think it's worth taking a shot there because what are you really giving up for Garrett Wilson? Probably not a ton.
And what people, I mean, he's also 1 touchdown under expected through week 6.
Yeah.
So the touchdowns will come. And again, what your league mates aren't doing, especially in casual leagues, that if you guys are in casual leagues, your league mates aren't going and looking at the cornerbacks he's played, like I just showed you on the screen.
Yep.
So that's the kind of stuff you can look at and say, okay, you can get Garrett Wilson fairly cheap right now. I think he's a buy.
Yep. Calvin Ridley. What the heck is going on with Calvin Ridley? What the heck is going on with a receiver that hasn't played in the NFL in 2 years, is on a new team, and has to build new chemistry with a new quarterback and a new system with a new head coach, a new everything? What's going on with Calvin Ridley? Why isn't he producing as the low-end or high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 that everyone expected this year? Why is that not happening?
And here's what's funny. Like, I just want to take a second here. We got trashed. We got trashed for saying we would take Christian Kirk over Ridley this year. Trashed. Calvin Ridley after this week. So through 7 weeks in the NFL season, he is the wide receiver 36. He's almost a wide receiver 4.
Who could have ever predicted this?
We did predict it.
We told you.
And you need to find that clip and put it in right here. Calvin Ridley is officially a 2nd-round pick now on Underdog Best Ball Drafts, a 2nd-round pick. So at that price, I think you have to understand, for us to spend a 2nd-round pick on Calvin Ridley, who's not played in the NFL for 2 years, instead of spending it on a running back like Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor, it just feels silly to us. So we're going to take running back a lot of times in that range. We need to
It's worth it.
It's worth it because we got a lot of crap for it. But honestly, with Calvin Ridley, I mean, you're talking about somebody who's dang near a wide receiver 4 right now. That's bad, guys. I mean, and that's not to say his ceiling isn't 20 points. We know it is. We've seen it twice this season.
Which is why he's a hold. The price in the preseason is different than the price now. We never hated Calvin Ridley, the talent. We never hated Calvin Ridley, the player. We hated his price going into the year because we knew that he would start the first half of the season slow. And we knew that his price would go down. Calvin Ridley is cheap. Very, very cheap. I don't know if at this point I would go as far as saying that Calvin Ridley's a screaming buy, but I do, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that Calvin Ridley is 100% a hold. If you are a Calvin Ridley owner and you're panicking and you're trying to move off him to get another player, don't. What are you going to get? Who are you going to get with higher upside than Calvin Ridley over the second half of the season?
You're not.
I mean, you're watching these games, you're watching Calvin Ridley, he's getting quality targets, he's getting big playability targets, and he's just not bringing them down. It's not necessarily his fault. He hasn't played football in 2 years. There was going to be growing pains. We knew this. He's a great route runner. He's a great talent, got great hands. He's getting plenty of opportunity in the red zone. He's just not capitalizing. He's only half a touchdown under expected through week 6. So it's like nothing really bad is happening there. He's getting the red zone and the end zone capability that we expected. He's just not getting the production yet because they're clearly not on the same page totally. They just aren't. It's the small things, guys. It's the small things. And if we know anything about the Jags, they get better and better and better as the season goes on. Please hold Calvin Ridley.
Next guy here is going to be Derrick Henry. This is kind of a hard one to analyze here, but looking at his game log in his last 4 games, 2 points, 25 points, 9 points, 20 points, and his snap share. We all know the story with the snap share and dang near being outsnapped by Tyjae Spears. 38%, 60%, 62%, 53%. It's concerning, yes. But look at Derrick Henry month by month over the last 3 seasons. Okay? October's clearly been his best month. But when you look at his efficiency, his yards per carry, 4 in September, 4.8 in October, 4.6 in November, 5.6 in December. The dude is a guy that gets better as he takes more hits. It's always been like that.
The dude is a guy.
The dude is a guy. And it's always been like, we've always known it, and we've always seen it as Colts fans. It's always killed us. But at the same time,
he's a dude.
October does have a much larger sample size for games, first of all. And second of all, as Derrick Henry gets more efficient this year, it's going to mean more. Why? Because he has more limited volume. Now, am I going out and buying Derrick Henry right now? It's hard to say that I am, because I think there are a lot of people that still think Derrick Henry and then have the name value, and then they're like, he's gonna be a stud. If people think that, no, I'm not, because number one, the Titans' offense is terrible. Number two, he's getting less volume than he was, and even if he gets more efficient, you're still talking about somebody who's fairly hit and miss compared to previous years where he was just an absolute game wrecker. I mean, every single time he was on the field, he's running back 15 this year. So. Honestly, right now, I lean hold for Derrick Henry. If you can get good return on investment for Derrick Henry, I'm honestly comfortable selling Derrick Henry. I'm curious to hear what you think about this one.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. I think I think where he's being priced right now is fine. Okay. I don't have an issue with it at all. Jaylen Waddle is a guy that I do have an issue with his price right now, and my verdict is it is way too low. Way too low. It's kind of been a tough stretch, an awkward stretch for the Dolphins recently. Obviously, Achane going down, the bum week against Buffalo, the bum week against Philadelphia, a couple good weeks for Waddle in between. He's getting plenty of targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets over the last 3 weeks. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about him as a talent. I'm not worried about his route running ability or anything like that. I just think ultimately Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins offense will continue to get more explosive, continue to get more effective as the season progresses, as they learn about their personnel and the chemistry overall even more. And yeah, their offensive line has limitations, but we know what Jaylen Waddle's upside is, and you win fantasy football leagues with upside. Waddle's pretty cheap right now. He's going at low-end wide receiver 2 prices right now. Yes. He has the highest upside there, so go ahead and take him.
DJ Moore,
DJ
Moore you should have sold 2 weeks ago when he had 49 points.
Yeah.
But
with 8 targets and 9 targets, only scoring 10 and 13
DJ Moore's
points.
3 touchdowns over expected this year. And that's, again, you're not going to get very many expected touchdowns when your quarterback's Justin Fields. Yeah. But with DJ Moore, I still think he's a sell. I still don't believe in the volume, the production long-term this season. I still think his price is too high. I think there are a lot of people that still think very highly of him because of he's been in the headlines last couple weeks.
Like consistent wide receiver 1 prices. So
even at high-end wide receiver 2, even mid wide receiver 2 prices, I might see you.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Adam Thielen is a guy, though, that we're definitely holding, and we do believe in his volume that he's getting. Even at 33 years old, you cannot deny it, guys. 14, 8, 13, and 13 targets since week 3 going to week 6. 31 points. 15, 27, 28. This is no joke. This is another guy that actually some of his production is coming from touchdowns, but even if you take those away, he's still scoring more than 20 points a game. That's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. This was a ballsy take that we had in the offseason. We said Adam Thielen, a very sneaky pick in the later rounds because he's really the most experienced receiver there. That's the most effective and pretty much the only weapon that Bryce Young is going to be able to trust. Lo and behold, here we are. Adam Thielen, he can run with a pitchfork through his back and still be effective as a fantasy asset.
Dude looks like he's limping on both legs.
Yeah, I don't care if I don't care if he's on a cane. I don't care if he's using a cane in the game. With this production, man, I'm absolutely buying it. Who else are they going to have this year? They're not going to have anyone else, man, to throw the ball to. Miles Sanders is a joke. You can barely check the ball down to him. He's so ineffective. Jonathan Mingo, he's not going anywhere this year.
I'm going to go as far as saying I think he's a buy. I released an article over at flockfantasy.com, 3 buy low players, and they all technically weren't buy lows necessarily. This is when I said he's probably not a buy low. I'm still buying him. I still think there are a lot of people that are like, Adam Thielen, he's old as dirt. Okay, I'll take him then. Yeah. I do not think he is not being sold, in my opinion, at wide receiver 1 prices, and he is producing as a wide receiver 1, and I think that's sustainable right now in that offense. Wow. I'm buying him. I'm totally fine buying him.
Yeah, and to be fair, this is a really interesting note. Adam Thielen's best production over the last 4 years has come in October, actually by a significant margin. 78 receptions in October, which is 20 more than his second best month. And when you go to November and December, it does go down a significant amount. Regardless, if it goes down a little bit, what's he putting up? 15, 20 points a game?
Wide receiver 2 numbers.
High-end wide receiver 2 numbers. Like,
Oh,
and if that's his price, man, I'm taking it.
All right. There you have our verdicts on those 8 guys. You're a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you play fantasy, we'd love to have you join the community. Trying to get to 5K. Head over to flockfantasy.com/domain if you want the rest of the season rankings, our exclusive articles, our Discord. Everything is over there. When you use code domain, you also get a team review for your team. You can take those final steps to win your championship this year. So like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.